Episode 7, Loneliness. And to me, it was important to speak about it because it's something that probably everyone either goes through once in their life or just feels it in the background all the time and perhaps can't articulate what's off or what's wrong. And sometimes it is just as simple as loneliness. And I certainly went through it, so I thought it might be worth speaking about today. It's a very random subject, but that's how my podcasts are going to roll. Something that I felt compelled to speak about at length. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to the Zest Method channel. I'm Amelia, an ex-army doctor and founder of a preventative medicine coaching business called, you guessed it, the Zest Method. I have an insatiable curiosity about the subconscious mind and self-betterment, and so I'm hoping to, through this medium, share what I learn and hopefully help humans feel better, not perfect. Now, the physiology or pathophysiology behind loneliness and why it's actually so potent for our health goes back to evolution, as it always does, and genetics and epigenetics. And if we think about it, that when you're a caveman or cavewoman by yourself, the odds of dying are far greater. So we managed to get to the top of the pecking order in the animal kingdom by being as a group. And the reason why loneliness feels so awful is because it almost goes back to when the biggest punishment for any human in the history of time is banishment from the group. And when you are removed from your community and have to fight the elements by yourself, as I alluded to earlier, the risk of dying is far greater because you then have to fight famine, find food, fight predators, fight infections, diseases, all by yourself. And so how that translates into modern day time is your body, the modern day or technology has accelerated far more quickly than our genes have. So when you become lonely, your body starts thinking it's really on its own, it's got to fend for itself. So from a physiological perspective, things begin to happen and change. So you get a different hormone profile, boost in adrenaline, cortisol, which of course all are really important hormones, but when they're chronically high, then that can begin to have deleterious effects on the human body. And equally, one of the other factors is of cardiovascular profile changes also, that the viscosity of your blood begins to thicken, because if you're by yourself and you're against a predator or cut yourself on a plant or scratches from a lion, then you want to reduce the likelihood of bleeding out, so your blood will become thicker so it can clot more easily. And there's no exception to the rule. It happens in modern day society as well, that your body doesn't know the difference between whether it's back in caveman times or 2026, that when you're by yourself, then you start to have cardiovascular consequences. They begin to get hardening of the arteries, which we call arteriosclerosis, and your blood begins to thicken. So you might have been familiar with those that died of a broken heart. It's a cardiovascular consequence of loneliness, which is why when you are lonely, it feels so goddamn awful. And no wonder, because it thinks you've been outcast from your tribe, and nothing is more terrifying than that. So the relevance of why I want to speak about it today is because I think we're going through an epidemic of loneliness, and everything is being siloed. For example, from the medical system, where you've got cardiology, you've got psychiatry, you've got I can't think of any more specialties off the top of my head suddenly. General surgery, all these. So that's being siloed. So again, when someone presents with a medical problem, you're put into a category, a box. Equally with politics and well, yes, politics is very, very polarizing, and so you begin to separate people there, polarizing views, opinions, sociology, and last but not least, which is, I think, the most insidious of them all, is our phones and technology, algorithms, social media, that you just have to walk down the high street now. And having come back from a meditation retreat where I didn't have my phone for 10 days, or when I came back from travelling back in 2024 and just been out in nature with other fellow backpackers, when you drop back into modern day society, could be London, New York, anywhere, it's really terrifying to see everyone glued to these little devices. And people just don't know how to communicate anymore. No one is able to keep eye contact. The classic example, I'm that weirdo in London who walks down the high street or through the park and looks at people. Is a challenge to myself to see whether, almost like a game, like, are they going to look up? Are they going to ignore me? It's amazing the kind of excuses people come up with. They suddenly, when they're walking towards me, become very interested in their watch, even though they don't need to see what the time is. Or they will take out their phone, that's a classic one, and just look down. Or they'll just ignore the fact that I'm there in the first place and will just walk on by. And then sometimes for those that do make the mistake of locking eyes with me, they'll freak. They don't know what to do. They either double take or they'll look away, look down. And another classic is if I then say, "Good morning." One chap freaked out so much that he said, "Good evening." It was 8 a.m. in the morning. This is how detached we are getting from each other, that now we can't even walk down the street without thinking someone greeting you by saying good morning. It is just so abnormal. And it's just these small actions, small moves that sort of accumulate to then us feeling very, very alone in such a busy society. So my own story of where loneliness comes in, and something, again, I didn't recognise even though I'd studied it, is I moved to London and technically was living the dream. So I managed to start working for myself. I was working from home all the time. I was in a one-bed flat, being able to afford that in London, which is, I think, quite rare. And being successful in what I did. Lots of friends, dating. So I was thinking, yeah, this is absolutely great, living life. And I then launched an aesthetics clinic. And on the day of the launch, I just felt completely deflated, very, very down, low in mood, no energy, almost like a cloud or ceiling over my emotions. And all my friends were saying, "Oh my God, you must be so excited. That's amazing. Well done. You've launched a website, your client base. It's all going well. Well done you. How do you feel?" And I just thought, I feel awful. I feel really bad. And I'll never forget sort of October 2023, where I actually looked like a right weirdo and just turned off all the lights. 6 p.m. at night, it's dark outside, just sat in a dark room by myself for a while thinking, what on earth is wrong with you? What on earth? You have everything you could possibly want. Why is that not enough, and why are you so miserable? So I really thought about it and then started to talk to my friends more. And they 3 independently said to me, "You really should go travelling. Of all people, Amelia, you've now done the gap year experience. You should go travelling." So I thought, well, the sunk cost fallacy of, do I close the clinic, do I not? But there was just some sort of inner need that said, no, you need to go travelling. So shut it all down, closed up shop, and then that January set off for a 6-month travelling, backpacking experience. And it is fundamentally the best thing I have ever done in my life, and I still need to thank those friends who told me to go, because they were totally right. It's exactly what I needed. And one of the reasons why it was so amazing is because you're around humans all the time. Yes, of course, you're out in nature, having really fun, beautiful experiences, the best sunsets, the best sunrises, fun activities, warm sun in your skin compared to those at home freezing in the UK winter. But what struck me was I was just around people all the time, whether we were going on trips together, and they could be strangers, but because everyone's so friendly and warm and just want to make friends because they're out there backpacking by themselves, naturally you're just drawn together. So one time I was heading for a supper by myself in a Vietnamese restaurant, and I hopped in this lift, and this girl also who looked European, definitely Caucasian, and looked like a tourist and backpacker, she hopped in the lift and we said, hello. And she then said, are you eating here alone? So I said, yes, I will be. And she said, well, can I join you? So of course I said, yes, absolutely. Hi, my name's Amelia, by the way. And it just seemed totally normal. I was like, yes, of course, come and, stranger, come and join me for supper and let's just get to know each other over some spring rolls. But if you'd done that in London, you'd be assigned to a psychiatric unit as a crazy person. So this is the difference I'm talking about. And just through doing that for several months, I then suddenly almost self-diagnosed myself. Like, oh my God, you've just been really, really lonely back in London, and that's been the issue. That's what's gone wrong. Which was quite a revelation for me, because I thought, wow, despite having technically everything, when you're devoid of human connection and oxytocin, nothing material matters. Just back down to evolution, which I thought was very interesting, incredible. And so when I came back, I thought, right, how do I address this loneliness issue? And I just went through each in turn of the things I could control. Because obviously, when you're looking for a mate, you start dating, and that is a factor out of your control. You can't force love. That's just going to happen in its own time. So I then thought, well, whilst I'm perhaps doing that in the background, let's try and address the factors that I can control. And so hopefully some of the solutions I came up with I'm going to share on here, because maybe that might help others. But the first thing was living by myself. So obviously we all like our own space sometimes, especially if you're introverted, even though I'm definitely an extroverted introvert. But I suddenly thought, actually, living by oneself always is not good for you. So then renting at the time, I decided, right, I'm going to switch flats. I went from a 1-bed to a 2-bed, so that at least during the first thing in the morning or last thing at night, you're going to have a flatmate, a friend, a human in the same apartment or flat as you, just to be able to have the small talk. And that was perfectly fine, and just reduced those solitary hours that were racking up. When it came to working for myself, entrepreneurial route, working from home, I thought, right, that also isn't good, because that means you're spending all of your daytime alone. And that's when I signed up to a sort of co-working space. I'm currently with a private members club called Pavilion, but obviously there's spaces, there's WeWork, there's Soho House, there's all sorts. But that really helped, because then once I got to know the staff, got to know some of the members, it becomes like a work family, which was incredibly heartwarming when someone just says, oh, good morning, Amelia, how are you? Or would you like your usual coffee? That's just small things. It's just made such a difference. Or equally, let's say, for example, you're not in that financial position to be fortunate enough to sign up to a co-working space, which, of course, a lot of us will be in that position, then just, I don't know, your local cafe or local restaurant, somewhere you can hang that maybe those strangers get to know you. It's just a sense of familiarity for your nervous system, and get into a routine, get you out of the house, you have to make an effort, dress up. And that's all helps towards structure and tackling loneliness. Another thing I did was just throw myself into extracurricular activities. So run clubs, LGBT events, Also, what else did I do? Went to an art class, went to a group ice skating session. All these random things that part of me was selfishly driven because I actually wanted to get better at ice skating. I wanted to access the right hemisphere of my brain and do more creative stuff. But of course, a byproduct of that was then spending an hour of your evening surrounded by strangers, rather than just being sat in my flat alone watching Netflix. So that really, really helped. And then lastly, I've mentioned Run Club, but I think there's something they're really sort of the craze now. But I think there's something really quite powerful about doing something hard with a group of people. So it could be a run club, or it could be CrossFit or High Rocks, or, I don't know, sprints around an athletic track. Okay, that sounds very physical, but even if you did something mentally hard, that when you go through something hard with other fellow humans, trauma bonding is a thing. And it's something so special that you share with those particular cohort of people that no one else can possibly understand what you went through. And that can be very, very powerful as well. Hopefully some of those things help. If you are getting a sense that maybe something's off, but you can't put your finger on it, then maybe it could be because you're lonely. It's far more common than you think, and not something to be ashamed to admit. I was lonely, and now I'm not. And I can genuinely, through the internal fibres of my being, I can feel the difference. And hopefully my blood has reduced in viscosity and flowing a bit more freely. I'm reading this book called Flow. I can't pronounce his name. Mihaly no, not going to attempt that. And he really struck a chord with me the other day when I was reading in bed. Just one of those real sort of eureka moments. And it was this, that when I've been single for a long time, and obviously I'm trying really hard to find someone, but again, it's outside of my control. So you just got to keep trying. And so I made a promise myself that in between finding someone, you're going to make your single life as fruitful and as good as possible, so that you can really enjoy the journey of eventually finding someone and settling down. And I definitely have done that, where I live now a really, really fun, happy single life, if that even does exist. But what really bugged me is that I'm always sort of 95% content or 95% happy. And it's when someone comes into your life, whether it just be through texting or you're at that really early phase of sort of dopamine, that just adds that extra sprinkle of 5%, where everything is brighter. You've got a skip in your step, the dopamine rush, nothing really matters as much to you anymore, doesn't really get to you because of this person that's come into your life. And I had it countless times before where I think, what is that? And it used to really bother me because I was like, why can't I get there by myself? Why can't I be 100% okay? I don't want to need someone to give me that 5%. It should be a want rather than a need. And that always used to bug me, that I couldn't get there through enough personal development and reading enough books to get there myself. Until I read this book. And of course, it's so obvious now, and mainly is sort of the core theme of this podcast. So you'll guess what's coming because I've studied it. I know all about it. I know the pathophysiology behind it. But still, I didn't see it from that perspective. So I will read to you what they put. So, of the things that frighten us, the fear of being left out of the flow of human interaction is certainly one of the worst. There is no question that we are social animals. Only in the company of other people do we feel complete. Full stop. And I thought that was incredible because there am I thinking, I must get 100% okay by myself. I don't want to feel dependent on anyone, even if it's just 5%. But then that book made total sense, where I thought, actually, no wonder I don't feel complete just by myself. Actually, if I did feel 100% by myself, that's alarming and not natural. So that suddenly made me feel a lot better. I was like, oh, that's why actually when you have a really good relationship with your family, friends, and people come into your life, whatever stage it might be, even if they come and go, it just feels so damn good. And that's okay, because we are social animals. So that is episode 7, loneliness. Oh yeah. What I'm supposed to end the episode with is, do you think you're lonely? Have a think about how you feel about loneliness. What does lonely you look like? And perhaps at times think, if you are lonely, think back to times when you weren't lonely. And where were you? Who were you with? What were you doing so that you weren't in that lonely state? And then try and work your way back and do what we did last time to not be lonely. Or again, even just get curious about loneliness. This whole podcast is about just get curious and see what you can do to feel better. So we'll leave it there, and I'll be back next week.